is there going to be a tactical nuclear weapon deployed in Ukraine? Because that's when everyone pays attention.
Right.
Because that's when my kids start potentially breathing radioactive material, and it becomes very real and dangerous. Or at least that's what seems to be on people's minds as something that would be a game changer. Because right now, like you said, most people in the West just don't care. They might pretend like they care on Twitter, but they just don't care because it still doesn't affect them.
Correct.
So
here's what will not happen. You will not see a missile launched out of Russia carrying a nuclear warhead that lands in Ukraine. That's not going to happen. You're not going to see Russia launch a nuclear missile that lands in Poland or Germany or France or the United States. None of those situations are going to happen. Those are situations that stand no net benefit for Russia. Is there always a chance? Of course there's always a chance, a 0.5% chance, a 3% chance, a 1.2% chance, whatever. The probabilities are extremely low because that escalates things to an uncontrollable level, and that's not what Russia wants. Russia wants a long, slow burn where the rest of the world just slowly turns their attention away from Ukraine and a war of attrition. That's what Russia wants.
And they just get it back.
They don't even need it back.
Right.
All they need
the influence back.
All they need is the influence. All they need is one or two territories. They need Donbass and Luhansk, just like they were targeting in the beginning. They need a shadow government in those two places, and they need NATO to realize that there's no benefit going into Ukraine. No benefit giving Ukraine NATO status because that's going to really piss off the Russians. And nuclear weapons are a deterrent. Right now, Russia does not want to go to war with NATO. If they make Ukraine part of NATO, that changes the calculation for Russia.
Okay, but NATO won't do that.
Exactly.
So the missile doesn't come from Russia, but it doesn't mean one doesn't get detonated.
Correct. That's exactly right. And that's another thing people don't realize. Russia's unlikely to create a tactical nuke that can be easily tied to Russia. If it comes in through Moldova, if it comes down through Belarus, if it comes in a briefcase, if it's a small yield bomb that isn't clearly nuclear, but detonated in a suitcase or underground somewhere in Ukraine as a message, what does that do? Unless it can be tied directly to Russia, it makes it very difficult for the legal structures of the UN and NATO to take action. And again, it's not a NATO country. Look at what just happened with the missiles that landed in Poland and killed Polish nationals. Right away, the world jumped on accusing Russia. The investigation later showed it was actually a Ukrainian anti-air defense weapon. It's also interesting that then Poland didn't hold Ukraine responsible for the inaccuracy of their own weapon. They still blamed Russia because Russia's the ultimate aggressor. If a nuclear weapon goes off, Russia already knows they're going to get the blame. They also know that anybody out there, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, some transnational threat, if anybody wants to really make a mess of the world right now, they just have to set off a nuclear weapon in Ukraine, or even just a big conventional weapon that looks like it could have been a nuclear weapon, because the whole world's going to collapse and make accusations faster than an investigation can be carried out.
What's the likelihood of that happening in the next year?
That's what scares me, because the likelihood shifts, and it shifts in wide shifts week to week. A week ago, 2 weeks ago, it would seem like that's the next logical step from Russia's current campaign of attacking infrastructure, right? They're currently in an air campaign blowing up electrical grids and water grids and attacking the infrastructure, which again, people call illegal, but according to UN laws, it's still a gray area. It could be conceivably deemed as legal because Ukraine has broken human rights and mandated that all adult men between 18 and 55 remain in country and potentially mobilized to fight. So
have they? They
yeah,
have? Okay.
Yeah, that's what they did back in March.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And human rights, that is a violation of human rights.
It's conscription is?
Because it's only for men, so it's immediately discounting women, which is not something that the UN supports. And then it's targeted towards a specific ethnicity and a specific group.
Russia.
Ukraine.
Oh, Ukraine. Okay.
Right. So now you're restricting freedom of movement of Ukrainian males 18 to 55 just because they're Ukrainian males. That is a violation of human rights.
Okay.
So, but we look past that. But my point is, 2 weeks ago, it's the next logical step. Now that Zelensky's willing to talk negotiation, like Zelensky's signaling that he doesn't need to see all the same stipulations that he was saying before, that de-escalates the conflict, which is what the whole world wants to see, is a de-escalation of conflict.
You didn't give me a number.
A probability?
Yeah.
So I would say right now we're sitting at probably like a 30% probability.
Really? In the next year?
In the next year that you're going to see a large conventional explosion or a potential small yield nuclear weapon that comes from a non-Russian source. Yeah, it's
go off
1
there.
in 3.
1 in 3. And what happens with a low yield nuclear weapon? Like, we don't know. Like, is there much fallout? Is there radioactivity?
No, like low grade nuclear weapons are really what tactical nuclear weapons have become. They're essentially big enough to wipe out maybe 500, half a square mile, or half whatever that is in kilometers.
Is that like Hiroshima or something?
No. Hiroshima was a large yield weapon.
And it was done above the ground.
It was a bomb, not a missile, right?
Okay.
So there's a couple of things to keep in mind with nuclear weapons. So the altitude at which they're elevated has a lot to do with the radiation footprint that they make. So the most strategic nuclear weapons actually detonate above, while they're still in the atmosphere. They'll detonate it at a mile above ground level. Okay. And then that sends a fireball at its maximum size down to destroy all of life. And a shock wave, it sucks the air out from the ground and takes it up into the atmosphere, and people suffocate. And then it irradiates the entire ground and then shoots all that dust up into the atmosphere. So when you want maximum destruction, you trigger a nuclear detonation at altitude. When you want minimum destruction, you actually detonate it at ground level. Because now at ground level, the ground absorbs the smallest footprint of radiation and irradiated energy, but the fireball still goes to its full size. So you'll burn everything. You'll still have a shock wave that goes, you'll still have a vacuum of oxygen that goes, but you won't have the same nuclear winter that you would if it was detonated from above. So, and Russia does not want to see a nuclear winter because predominant airstream will take it into Russia. And
they don't necessarily want to get it into Europe because then you're going to get some very upset, angry Germans, and you don't need that.
Correct.
Either.
And then the other thing to keep in mind is the target, right? What would be contrary to the narrative that's out there? Russia's targeting infrastructure. Russia's targeting military or debatably military targets. They are. When you've got a country that basically says that every male 18 to 55 is a potential combatant, attacking the energy grid, it makes it a viable target. Ukraine's decisions have given Russia the freedom to do the things that the UN and the rest of the world likes to criticize, but it's going to be sticky. When this goes to an international court, it's going to be very sticky. So the target of a conventional weapon, or the target of a low-yield nuclear weapon, it makes the most sense for it to be Kyiv. It makes the most sense for it to be wherever they believe the center of government is. Because if they can either shake Zelensky or neutralize Zelensky, who's going to step up? What's the next step then? Right? It gets hairy. It's not going to be a place like Odessa. It's not going to be a place like Mykolaiv. It's not going to be a place like Mariupol. Those are places for conventional fighting, but they're not strategically significant enough to warrant a large detonation.
Okay.
Right?
And now they're ruining their breadbasket, though. I mean, you take out Kiev, this country's got problems for 20 years. Correct.
Except that the Russians don't really mind that because they're just going to send in, they want everyone's will to break.
Okay.
And that's the Russian mantra. That's their MO.
Hey, it's Brian Rose, founder of the DeFi Academy. I've told you my 4-week crypto bootcamp is amazing, but don't take my word for it. This is what my students are saying.
The DeFi Academy was an amazing experience for me. It took me totally out of my comfort zone.
In this course, I was challenged, I was held accountable, and pushed to do things that honestly weren't always easy.
It's been phenomenal, and I can't believe we're already up on our 4 weeks. It has flown by.
Going through this DeFi accelerator by far was one of the best courses I've taken.
You do this course, you really get into the nitty-gritty of the activities that will make you comfortable with decentralized finance.
Thank you so much to Brian and everyone at London Real and the DeFi Academy for even putting together an amazing course like this.
Anybody else that wants to do it, please sign up. It is well worth the money.